First of all, thank you to Matt Videotech for inviting me to today. We're gonna talk a little bit about immersive video, and we're gonna be talking about what makes it weird and some of the tricks that us people inside the immersive video industry use, and that's why I called it like some of the quirks, some of the stuff that we love to hate about immersive video. So, well, hi, I'm Victor García. I'm one of the founders of YBVR. And let's see. So yeah, these are the topics. What is this thing, immersive video? And a couple of things of what makes it hard. And I guess the Q&A, as he said, we're gonna do at the beers. Raise your hand if you've seen an immersive video, say in the last year. Okay, just to give myself an idea, anyone here who owns a VR headset, XR headset, something? All right. Okay, I was expecting more, I'm not gonna lie. Anyways, come on. Because we're not Nokia, so we are not like globally known. Just a little bit about us. So we basically are believers since 2016 about this whole idea that watching an event is about to, or is due to evolve into something more dynamic, something more immersive, interactive, personalized, experiencing, feeling inside the action. And we have this little thing that we call Xstadium. This is an app available in the US. This is our, I will say, our flagship app. So here we have like NBA, UFC, NASCAR, all your nice sports, but only in the US. Please don't kill me. It's the lawyers, it's not me. And this thing is not working that well. I think that everyone knows what immersive video is supposed to be. Like even an LLM, you go and ask it and it will show you, right? So yeah, you can ask it and it will kind of give you the idea of like you're in the front row from anywhere in the world. And you know, immersive video can be really great. For those of you who haven't experienced it, you really should, but you should do it at the high level of quality. Immersive video can really give you that sense of presence. It can really be the real capture as opposed to, you know, digital representations, imitations of the reality. No, this is the reality as best as captured as it can. And it's really ready for prime time. Like we have NBA, of course, that's us. But you have also our friends at Apple that are doing all these amazingly produced videos. Have you tried this spatial video in Apple Vision? Anyone? Yeah, it's good stuff. Let me assure you that. Those of you who are in a little bit there, like Apple is doing even like some really professional stuff like this submerged thing. If you haven't tried it, this is really, really nice, ready for prime time. But of course, that's only if it's done right. And it's very easy to do it wrong. When it's done wrong, it's kind of a mess. It can be blurry. It can be boring. It can make you sick. Sometimes someone tried and made a valiant effort like 7 years ago of doing like a UEFA Champions League, send it on YouTube and have it for everyone to see on the headsets. It was not great. But even worse, it's like this idea of, hey, let's put a VR camera on a roller coaster and let's show it to the... No, please don't do it. Never. Don't. It's not fun, okay? So it's very mature. And from choosing the camera positions to making sure how you even deliver this thing to like knowing what the audience really will enjoy, which is not the same as what they think will enjoy. It's very important in immersive video. So definitely not easy. So I chose 3 quirks only. There's a lot more, but just 3. And I chose them across the chain of, let's say, one at the beginning, one in the middle, one in the end of the whole chain of doing this immersive video stuff. So capture side, we're gonna talk about tactical amputation. So yeah, that happens in war and in immersive video too. So distribution side, we're gonna talk about waste prevention protocol. We don't want to waste anything, and you'll see what I mean by that. And finally, on the rendering side here, we're gonna talk about cutting a middleman. Right, so let's get on. Tactical amputation has to do with stuff that we are doing sometimes and sometimes not. In some of these, some existing and some not so existing. The black magic thing, it's still a prototype. It will come, but well. And Okay, so this is going to be a little bit surprising for some of you, but those of you who work more in production, you will maybe know. What if I told you that even the sharpest cameras in the world today actually blur your image on purpose because they think it's better? Even, you know, the fancy cameras do this. You don't know what I'm talking about? Well, let me introduce the concept of the OLPF, the optical low pass filter. So what's that? Okay, so this is the diagram of your typical camera. You zoom in and you'll find something like this. You know, you'll have like this filters that kind of you know, filter out everything that doesn't have to do with that, like a frequency of light, so that you can have like your soft pixels, so that you can capture your nice RGB bits that make it into the sensor, that make it into like the amplification and whatever that makes it into either the SD card or your like output for live streaming. But inside there, or more specifically, before this step, there's this thing called the optical low pass filter, which is basically a physical blur that occurs. What it does is that it basically splits the beam once horizontally, once vertically, so that it actually reaches 4 of those sensors, of those sub-sensors, as opposed to just one. Why? You may wonder, right? Sounds counterintuitive. Like, am I not making this just to like have more resolution? Why am I splitting these beams? That effectively will cause me blur. Well, it's to avoid at least these two type of things. So one may be known to some of you who have worked like from long in this is this moire effect, and this like a distortion. So this is, for example, like some person is wearing like some stripes, and those stripes when captured, like if you don't do this, you will start getting moire. But it's not just in the line or physical patterns, it's also in the color patterns. Will you be surprised to know that this is actually a gray fabric, plain gray. But if you don't do these tricks, then the direct beam of light will enter only, for example, the red subpixel. Some will enter only the blue subpixel, and some will enter only the green subpixel. And then you start getting these funny patterns on something that's supposed to be a plain color. So of course you don't want this. So the OLPF is preventing this from happening, and especially when the camera moves. But of course, the problem is that it blurs the image. So you can see here, like this is a very like detailed analysis from the sensor, and you can see how like what's supposed to be a sharp image, well, it has like these duplicate kind of things. Okay, so camera manufacturers are of course not crazy to do this. They are doing this for our own good, but you have a price to pay. Okay, so we take it off, right? Well, maybe. So there's pros and cons to all this, right? So on the pro side, you will get your sharper image. Another good news is that this was more necessary when the resolutions were lower. Now that there's like larger resolution sensors, this is less of a need. And even some of the fancier, more expensive, of course, camera manufacturers having like an OLPF that you can disable. So it's like an electronic switch that just like either turns the thing on or off. Not always you can get those, and we're already talking about like expensive cameras here because they are very high resolution and all of that. So on the minus side, it's risky. Either you have the manufacturer do it on your behalf, or if you are brave enough to dare, you might as well break $100,000 equipment. So you need to be very brave. And the other problem is that normally that camera cannot use for non-immersive video because all this moire and artifacts prevention, it's easier to live without them when the camera doesn't move, which is very common in immersive video. So you're doing like a broadcast of a live game, so you just put like the camera here, doesn't move. Okay, it's fine, I can live with it. But if I'm gonna do that to say a 100K camera, well, then, that you cannot use for anything but immersive video, well, you better be sure that you will have a lot of immersive video in your pipeline. All right, so that's tactical amputation. Now let's talk waste prevention protocol. And I guess this is common knowledge for many of you, but actually, in 360 video, which is one of the subsets of immersive video, we're using a technique that has been there for a long time, and we're just repurposing it, which is this whole like a map projection thing. This is Mercator, where you like take this image and just like wrap it around the sphere, and that's your view. So that's all good, except that it's kind of inefficient. And what do we mean by that is like if you like map a little bit like what the pixel density looks like when you're gonna wrap this thing around the sphere, something really counterintuitive or stupid happens, which is that you have more density in these parts which no one really cares about. So that's not great. Now, we're talking pixel density. How much pixel density is enough anyways? So a number that comes around a lot in the immersive industry is this thing about the pixels per degree. If you haven't heard about this, this is basically very easy. Just how many pixels you have and how many degrees you have, you divide those, you get your pixels per degree. Typically, 60 is the magic number. Now, why 60? Well, it has to do with something that optometrists call the 20/20 vision. And basically, one of the aspects that defines that 20/20 vision is that the detail, the minimum detail that you're able to discern is 1 arc minute, so 60 of those per degree. So that's where that number comes from. It's just what an optometrist have decided that human eye can normally see. And that's why that's like the gold standard. Now, a lot of the screens, you know, that screen there, of course has it, especially at this distance, you know. But it's not that easy to achieve it in XR. If you ever thought that 8K was already overkill, let me assure you, in XR, it's really not. So a couple of numbers just to give you a flavor of what that means. Your 8K video, 7680. If you were to do 360 video, well, that's 21 pixels per degree. That's like 40 off the mark. You do it for 180 video, well, then it's 42. Okay, better. Still not there. Now, you want to do 60 pixels per degree in a 360 video, that's 21,000 pixels round. You want to do that as stereoscopic, and you are getting in the 400 megapixels. Let me assure you, that's not easy. No one is doing this in practice, really, and especially not when streaming. Like, most of us in the industry are starting to get here. But even that is not so easy. And one of the things that you can do to prevent the waste that you can do in distribution is to just acknowledge for the fact that you're not looking at the whole thing at the same time. So it doesn't really make that much sense to send the whole thing with the same quality. So let's just send what I call here the viewport of like in this scenery, this dancer. Well, let's just send that with the high quality, and the rest we do with the lower. So that will save us pixels, that will save us bandwidth, that will save us bits, time, and hopefully more people enjoy it. So for example, if I like go to this other direction, then we're gonna do it like repurpose all the quality so that it goes there, and this maybe goes in a lower resolution. You need to be fast enough to adapt so that like no one will notice that this magic trick is happening. It all needs to happen behind the scenes. But well, that's what we do. And many others, by the way. Which many others? Okay, so many have tried to solve this. One of the possible approaches to solve this problem has to do with just like wiggling around with geometries. So you can like start using your cube maps, which is just like a, you know, doing funny math to map it in, and now it's not a sphere, now it's a cube. Now, for example, Meta and others started to do something like a pyramid. So it's funny, like you're just looking at this base of the pyramid, and then the rest is in lower resolution over here. We've tried something that we call our pixel perfect layout, so some stuff that we tried back in 2019. Some other people have started like doing like some really sophisticated stuff. So okay, so we're getting creative into how to solve this, but the basic idea is the same. Let's just rearrange things so that the area of interest has higher resolution than the area of not interest, hoping that that will save us bits and pixels and all that. Okay. Another possible approach is just to do it on the codec. There's a company, Tile Media, that's very good at this. It uses a special artifact of or mode of operation of the HEVC codec, which is these HEVC tiles, which is basically that part, independently decodable regions of a picture. The advantage of that is that you encode once, and then by using some clever tricks of muxing the bit streams and then demuxing them and then decoding them correctly. If you like take care of your bits properly and you line them up nicely, the HEVC codec will understand it because it's independently decodable. Another way of doing it. We all are trying to solve the same problem, just different approaches. Finally, on rendering time, cutting the middleman. And before we talk about cutting the middleman, let's describe the middleman. And the middleman is a very helpful one. It's for those of you who may have worked or even seen a little bit of immersive video, you may know that we use game engines for most of the time. And that's what I call like using the wrong tool for the right reason. Like, why would we use like a video game? And we don't do that in like desktop or in web. We don't do this. We just go and like paint it on the screen, right? And here we're like using a video game engine. Well, why? A big part of the reason is because, well, this whole thing has to do with like rendering in 3D worlds. And these engines are good at doing that in real time, and they are really optimized at their work. One of the, let's say, implications of that is that these game engines rely a lot on 3D pipelines, because that's what they do, right? Like they're doing like nice games with Batman and like, you know, superheroes, whatever. And so they rely a lot on the 3D pipeline. Now, I know that maybe not all here have worked on 3D pipelines, so I'm just gonna describe them very quickly. You start with the points of the thingy that you wanna paint. Then you will like start drawing the lines and turn them into shapes. Then you will like add the texture and whatever, and you will turn it into objects, and that's what's gonna go into your screen. Now, to get a little bit more technical, that thing is called like the vertex shading. Then there's something that's called the rasterization and tessellation that will turn it into what will be drawn into the screen. You will start adding the fragments of color and transparency and like a bunch of other things. That will actually make it into something that's called the frame buffer, which is what finally gets into the screen, right? Same step, just with a little bit more technical names. Video is there, and is one of the elements that is in this whole pipeline. Mostly, you can think of it as the texture of that happens, that starts being drawn on these steps. Now we start counting here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to get to something that shows on the screen. Okay, and we're done, right? No, at least not in Immersive in XR. It's actually here where the fun begins. The fun begins because after you have this, you still need to present it in a way that makes sense in the headset. And that is the job of our good friend, the compositor. Now, all manufacturers, Apple has their version of the compositor, Meta has it, Pico has it, everyone has it, right? The general job of the VR compositor is to basically turn something that looks like ready for a normal screen into something that is ready to be shown, and after it goes through the optics of your VR headset, be looking correctly. So you still need to do some work. Basically, you need to do these distortions for and you need to know exactly what lens you're going to be using, so that the pincushion or the barrel distortion, all of those things. Sometimes your 3D engine will not reach correctly, so you will have to start doing this time warp thing, and some like inventions that the thing does. Then you need to adjust for perspective, maybe from the time the frame was finalized in the overall pipeline to the time it's going to be shown to the user moved their head a little, and you need to adjust for that. So that's the space warp. So it gets really complicated, right? And finally, that makes it into the frames of the screen. So, okay, so 5, 6, 7, 8 steps. Now, all of this is necessary, very necessary in the 3D space. When you're doing 3D models and you're like fighting a monster and it's going to come to you and like you're moving and all of that, it makes a lot of sense. And the monster is going to be moving, like there's going to be like 3D models that animate, complex, right? But we're talking like video here, so it can be made simpler. Or I want to be lower. The problem was placed in the XR industry. This can be made simpler, and it doesn't just apply to video. This applies to photos. This applies to user interfaces, panels, stuff that is simpler, that we're like happen to be using these 3D engines to do it, but we may not have to. So this is where our cutting the middleman comes. And the name of the cut to middleman technique is called the VR compositor layers. It's part of the compositor, and it's a special mode of operation. So what that will allow us in rendering time is that all of this can go away. No more of this. Instead, we're going to take the texture, and we're going to apply what is called the overlay or underlaying, directly talking to the compositor. And that goes straight into the screen. This can save a lot of these intermediate steps that, as precisely or as like nicely sampled and laid out as they can be, they can inevitably result into loss of detail. So there's an example that's in the meta documentation that's pretty interesting. It's about like this poster that they are using for this. And you can see just how the letters and the details are. For example, the A is like all blurred and like with this jaggy, and here it's like way like sharper. You try this on video, and you like start like you had like some certain artifact that you didn't even know you had, but then you turn the compositor layers on, and magic happens. So yeah, it's worth to cut this middleman. So as you can see, there's a common pattern in all these things that we're exposing, these 3 quirks that I was talking about. It's all about just make sure that the XR video looks really sharp, because it's one of the most important needs. Because if you don't do that, people don't really feel like they are there. And that's the whole point of the immersive media. So that's all I had for today. And we're going to do the rest in the beers, right? Cool. Thank you.